It's my pleasure to share with you a bit more about our journey to standardization of total rewards and moving it to the global services model, which is not necessarily very usual way of handling compensation and benefits. My name is Jitka Mindlova. I am leading the compensation team focusing on Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I work for Johnson & Johnson, and my story today will be covering exactly this transformation and change that we have in our company. First of all, what I wanted to point out is you see a link for Poll Everywhere. So kind ask if you would like to respond. It's just a few questions about how our comp-ban actually dealt with in your company. So either you can scan the QR code or you can just put to browser polev.com/trjnj. So it would be nice. And then when we have the roundtable, maybe we can discuss about the outcomes, or if we have time now, we can do it so as well. Maybe just super briefly about me. I'm with Johnson & Johnson for 7 years, and it's a very interesting topic for me because I have been on the journey of this transformation since the beginning. And I will talk you a little bit through it, what we have done and where we are now and where we are heading. Great, so what's ahead of us? So I will tell you super briefly about Johnson & Johnson company to just give you a little bit of lay of that land. I will talk about global services. Nevertheless, the major part will be really focusing on the total rewards model, and I will be focusing on the benefits of having total rewards within the standardized global option and how it's actually enabling the better employee experience. So that will be majority of my presentation. And either we have some time for Q&A or we leave it to that roundtable discussion, whatever fits. Again, throughout the presentation, you will see the survey reminder, so ignore it. If you have already responded, please respond in case you didn't do it so far. Great, so let's start with Johnson & Johnson. So actually, our company was founded in 1886. And at the time, we were a startup, yeah. We were quite revolutionary, and when we have entered the market, we have done deal-breaking changes. And maybe to give you a little bit more of that flavor, and to also explain how this translates to today, let me bring you back to that time. So 1886, imagine how the surgical procedures looked like, how the surgical sites looked like. So there was no disinfectants. Surgeons didn't wear gloves. The surgeries were, for example, actually conducted in universities with huge audience. No one wearing any protection, nothing. So you can imagine that the mortality rate super huge. And that's basically when J&J came with the idea of, or with the products that enabled to improve this situation. So it was creation of sterile products and really enabling that sterilization in the surgical places. Nevertheless, when we have started to sell our first product, it was not just the product. It was also educating the patients, training the doctors, ensuring that there is sufficient products everywhere on the surgical sites. When the company was established at this time, half of our workforce were women. So again, bringing us a little bit back to diversity, equity, and inclusion, already part of the building principle, let's say. And going back to the spirit of my presentation today, at that time, our employees had benefits. So at that time, you can again imagine how the labor market was like. So our employees had, for example, warm meals during night shifts, or they had legal counseling. They actually had a pool to go for a swim. We don't have pool today, so I'm constantly reminding our company that maybe we should revisit. But already at that time, it was a totally different way and a different approach. If we go to today, we are no longer a startup. We simply do not qualify. Currently, we have 144,000 employees across the globe. And we are still keeping that startup mentality. So those few things I try to show you on that example. We always focus on the areas that have biggest impact on the health of humanity. We focus where we feel that we need to put the patients and people first. And we really focus on making the solutions work wholesome. So looking not only to fixing one thing, but really fixing the system as such and providing a wholesome solution. So super briefly about us, and let's go to today. So for us, we are operating across 3 major sectors. So I would assume that you might know some of the brands that are part of our consumer health. So I assume Listerine or Neutrogena or Johnson's Baby are quite well-known brands. Nevertheless, we are active across pharmaceuticals, where we are focusing on research development in treatment of severe diseases. So we focus on oncology, psychiatry, and so on. And we have also MedTech division that's really focusing on tools and products that are focusing on, that are used during surgery. So it is actually said that whenever you will have a surgical site, very probably at least one tool will be of J&J. So you can imagine that even if I go back, how challenging it is for any supporting function to actually service such a large scope and large scale operations. Yeah, so you can imagine how diverse the workforce is, and so on. So, and that's what I really want to cover and really look at these total rewards in global services. Again, poll reminder. Nevertheless, I assume that you have already filled out. So, what is global services? I have mentioned multiple times the term. So global services is our internal shared service center that's really focusing on employee experience, effectiveness, and efficiency. So what we are doing continuously, we are taking frequent, repetitive, and scalable activities, and we are centralizing them to ensure that they are conducted on time and with a huge level of expertise. So our global services is basically focusing on 3 major tiers. So we are supporting the business with financial services, procurement, and human resources services. And we have also multifunctional. Here I would like to point out one specific service, and it was also mentioned in one of the presentations. So we have so-called contact center. That's our first level resolution support. So whoever has a question, employee, manager, whoever can go search for the answer, ask for advice, and get that first level information anytime. How it looks in numbers and locations. Yeah, so currently the global services employees in J&J, we have 4,700 across the globe, plus 1,200 of outsourced employees as well. We have basically 17 service offering, total rewards being one of them. Yeah, so the one I'm talking about is one of these 17 services fully captured and fully covered, and we support basically all employees across the globe. So whole 144,000 of employees are supported by global services. You see how the split of the hub is. So as I mentioned, I'm based in Prague, and basically our hub is servicing EMEA region. We have one hub in Tampa servicing North America, Bogota for LATAM, and we also have 2 service centers in APEC region. So we have one in Manila and one in Suzu. The Manila one is actually a global one, which means that from Manila, many processes from the global scope are being supported. So just a little bit of understanding how global services is. If you look at our region, because that's what I'm talking today about, yeah, so I need to cover mainly the HR transformation. Yeah, so that's something that started in Johnson & Johnson in 2015. Nevertheless, it was the first launch in US, and then we have launched in 2017 in EMEA as well. So basically in 2017, we have changed our HR model, and it's a very important prerequisite for us to actually launch in 2018 total rewards and learning. So in 2017, basically we have changed the HR model, where we previously had so-called HR services that were providing, let's say, end-to-end process. Nevertheless, we differentiated the HR service into 4 different buckets. Yeah, so people experience operations, focusing on employee life cycle. So from hire to retire, basically all of the changes in the system, employee changes, and so on, covered by that team. Talent acquisition, fully responsible for hiring talents, for hiring new employees, literally from the point where the need starts up until the person is J&J employee. Then we have employee and labor relations. So this team is especially focusing on the on the employees. Yeah, so any challenges that employees face or any challenge on the performance, that's basically where this is being landed. And also labor relations. So we have multiple times touched the work councils. So this team mainly deals with the work councils across the globe as well. And again, mentioning contact center because this is really a building pillar for the Total Rewards launch, because they can do that first level resolution of questions and services. More to come, so we are moving. So you see the ongoing journey. So you see like 2 years milestones, and we are still continuing. So we are always searching for the next step. We are always developing. Yeah. So we also touched interesting discussion about finished HR transformations. So I think it's a continuous journey with milestones. Yeah. Let's look at Total Rewards. So basically in across the globe and across Johnson & Johnson, the Total Rewards is basically present with corporate services tier and global services tier. So the corporate services tier is focusing on philosophy, strategy, governance, design, really global programs and definition where to go and so on. Total Rewards within global services, our team is much more focused on implementation, delivery, go-to-market, and being much more transactional. If you look specifically on our team, so if I go back and imagine our team, so basically we are divided into two halves. One team is focusing on compensation. So in compensation, we are focusing on salary structures, benchmarking. We are supporting any kind of compensation transactions that you can come up with. Now we have a lot of fun with year-end that was mentioned here as well. So I would say that's a huge chunk of our work as well. Another neighboring team are benefits. So with benefits team within global services, they are focusing on implementation of new benefits. They are focusing on vendor relationships. Yeah, so how actually are our vendors working with us? They are dealing with escalations. They are dealing with exceptions as well. Whole team is based in Prague. We have small number of people based also in Manila. So from that global hub supporting some of the processes as well. Great, so now that you know what we do and how we actually do it, I would like to maybe focus on that impact on employees and how we actually do it. So for us, and many times you have the discussion about the shared services, it's usually always the question about the cost saving. Nevertheless, for us, it's really being above that cost saving and really being competitive and provide a better experience for the employees, because it will be always main driver for us. So prior I go to those 4 pillars that are basically baseline for our Total Rewards within global services, I need to start with enablers. To actually make a successful launch, to actually make a successful journey, there need to be some things in place. One part I have described previously when I talked about existence and launch of GSHR. So actually, there needs to be already functioning system of that first level support. Yeah. So to actually make it a successful launch, that simple queries and simple questions are always covered with contact center. So as an example, question, how do I enroll for a benefit, will not be routed to our team, but will be responded already on that like first level step. Second enablers are the global policies and governance. Yeah, so to ensure that we are scalable, that we are providing, let's say, consistent approach and consistent treatment, we need to have really global policy and governance that we can work with, and also global compensation framework. Third enabler that I cannot omit, and we have discussed multiple times, is actually the IT. It's really the technical side. So the existing ticketing system and also the one system of records for HR data. So these 3 prerequisites are needed to actually make it a successful launch. If you look at those 4 pillars that we have built our Total Rewards within global services on, the first one is basically one experience. So by standardizing and centralizing, we are basically providing the same experience to each employee. We use the same criteria to review. We have clearly set up escalation procedure. And we also always ask our employees how satisfied they are. Yeah, so our employees are our customers, our leaders are our customer, and we are always asking them how did they like the support, and I will talk to it a little bit more as well. We are also empowering our employees, so we empower them to find many of the answers themselves, and we provide them with various tools how they can actually reach out. So there is option to chat, there is option to call, there is option to use email, there is option to directly go and raise a ticket. Each of these is monitored. So basically, if there is a question raised, it will be answered. So nothing gets lost. Maybe if someone is on vacation or it's somewhere in the email, it will always be traced back to that initial requester. Then we have the quality framework, and that's another super important pillar for us. So we are always going back to our service and reviewing how did it go, why did it go this way, and what can we do differently next time. So basically, we have instant reporting opportunity to always go back and have a look, for example, how long it takes to us before we resolved a query, how I would say happy the customer or the requester was. So this is enabling us simply to always have an opportunity to go and see maybe some weak points, to identify gaps in the process and ensure that we change it in future. And also we have some checks and balances. So we are responsible end-to-end for the process. So we can always go back and see how we can improve like the process, the governance overall. So that's something that's, again, very continuous effort and activity for us. So we are always looking how we can be better, how we can provide better service, how we can be more impactful, how we can maybe remove some of the repetitive work to have more time for this quality work that has a huge impact. So this is basically what enables us to go there and to really be really enables us to be that impactful employee experience within Total Rewards. How it looks practically. So quality framework. So I wanted to share some of the metrics that we are using, because our way of working is very much metrics driven. So we are looking basically at two types of metrics. One of them is the time aspect, let's say, and the second is the how aspect, yeah, and the satisfaction, let's say. So if you look at some of the metrics that we are using, so we are using lead time. Lead time for us is since the moment the requester asked the question to Total Rewards up until the time they got their resolution. Yeah, so did it take us 1 day, 7 days, 20 days? So really looking at how long it takes between that starting point and the finish. We also have certain SLAs, so we have certain service level agreements that tell us that a certain type of question we should resolve within 7 days. Different type of question we need to resolve within 14 days. So we are always looking back if we are really keeping this metric as well. If you look at operational level agreements, that's if there is handover between teams, are we like true to keeping that? And we also have the first time resolution. That means if a requester asks a question and we provide answer and resolve for the first time, that's the first time resolution. If the requester is not happy, they can go and reopen. So that's also something that we measure, what type of cases or what type of questions we were not able to resolve for the first time. If you look at the right side of the metrics, we basically have satisfaction surveys. So very similar, if you go purchase something on eShop, you usually get this question, how did you like the service? Would you recommend to a friend? Yeah, so we use a very similar approach to this, and we are using two metrics. So we are using the Net Promoter Score, where we are asking exactly this question. How did you like the service? You can rate 1 to 5. If they rate 5 out of 5, that's what we consider a so-called attractor. That means fully recommended, fully happy. 4 out of 5 for us means neutral, so it doesn't impact. 3, 2, and 1 would be so-called detractor. So that means people who are not happy with the service and wouldn't recommend. And at the end of the day, you basically calculate how many attractors minus detractors you have, divided by total number of responses, and it gives you either minus 100 to plus 100. That's how we calculate it, and that's what we are really looking at. And positive response rate is where we take those 4 and 5s and see, and this is what we consider like positive response rate, and we calculate how big percentage it is on the whole responses submitted. There is also always an option for the requester to say open question, to share open feedback, to share maybe how we can improve the process. So it's not only the numbers, but it's also the content. It's also what the requesters are telling us, yeah, about that, about their experience, yeah. So is it our service? Is it the policy? What is the challenge, yeah? Nevertheless, this really enables us to go case by case for those that are extremely negatively rated or extremely long or reopened multiple times. So we can always go back and see what went wrong, and maybe we see what are the improvement points and how can we actually get back on track, how we can change the process for future. Another example, and now we are really getting into that data-driven mindset that's very typical for us. So we use process mining. So we always go back and review how the overall route went. And we always try to see if it was efficient or not. So here you can see actually quite linear progression, yeah? So even from the shape of it, I think it gives a little bit of that message, because it's like where the process started, there's like some certain development, some emails, case closed. So you see almost straightforward line. On this side, you see completely different, a lot of arrows going back and forth, reopening multiple times, and really taking a lot of time before this was resolved. And you also see that it was resolved multiple times, yeah? So you have like resolved, close, back and forth, yeah? So when we have looked in this process mining, we have actually realized that for this one, the case changed owner for 8 times. So the requester asked a question and was pointed to 8 different teams to provide the answer until it landed actually with Total Rewards team, and that's why we have this nice example. We call this so-called ping pong case, because after those transformations that we have made, there can still be some processes between cracks, and this is how we are actually able to find them and identify them. So in this case, it was a very specific local policy in a local language that no one was owning. And again, it gives us a signal that there is maybe not something all right in that system, and we need to go back and see how we fix it for the future time. So that's how we are really using those data and those reporting and data mining in time. Another example of how we are looking at the data, yeah? So I shared with you that we look at multiple metrics, yeah? So you can see lead time, you can see SLA adherence, you can see the promoter score, you can see positive response rate, yeah? So those are basically the metrics, and this is how we see the outcome, yeah? And again, on the left, you see very not linear case, and you already see by looking at the numbers that maybe there is not something correct, that it's not fully right, so maybe we need to go back and review. Same time, on the right side, you see straightforward progression, you see quite okay-ish metrics, and from the first glance, you can already see complete difference, yeah? So that's how we are really looking at it, yeah? And we are reviewing the metrics on weekly basis, monthly basis, in some cases even on a daily basis, very much depending on the situation. Nevertheless, this is something that we really make a part of our day-to-day work. To wrap up, because this is basically where my presentation ends, I would say that if we look at what are the actual benefits for moving Total Rewards to that globalized and standardized way of working, it's really that traceability and improvement point, yeah? So I would say these are the 2 major things and 2 major takeaways for why to go this way, because you are basically giving an employee really answers, yeah? Maybe long time, maybe it doesn't happen so early, they might not be always satisfied, but they always get the answer, and you can always go back and see, is the process working, why it's not working, how we can fix it, what we can do. So that's basically us resolving and really focusing on that aspect. So that's everything from my side. I can have a peek because I don't have it linked to my presentation, but I can see how the final outcomes look like. So let me just briefly check on the survey. So I see some answers, which is really nice. So let me just briefly go there. Yep. So let me just quickly look. So I see some answers. Let me just give a moment before I see it. So yeah, so I see some answers. So we've posed a few questions. So one of them was, how do you solve compensation and benefits questions, actions, or issues? Yeah. So basically, I have two outcomes. I talk to my supervisor or I talk to my HR representative. Yeah. So those are the two major things. It changes. More people talks to their supervisor. So it now just changed a little bit the outcome. Nevertheless, these are the only two options. Yeah. So we have there were multiple options. Yeah. So that contact center option that I was talking about, or company page focusing on HR topics. Then we have asked about if there is a way how to share feedback, how happy you were with that answers. Yeah. So only 25% state formal process, 25% informal process, and 50% no. So there is basically no feedback whether this was successfully resolved, improvement points, and so on. And checking if you know how it's organized. So 50% it's center of excellence, and either regional or global function, but none of you responded that it's a global function the similar way that we have. And checking, and that's it. So those are the ones. So again, a little bit confirming that feedback is a really critical aspect and enabler to improve, to find the new ways how to address and continue providing better service to the employees. So that's all from my side. I think I'm within time. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.